Mike Gill, State of Corruption, in Washington. Now, the reason why I am in Washington is to deliver evidence that you're going to see, for instance, in this video and the videos to follow. I'm going to create a series. And in this series, you're going to see exact evidence visually. I'll step you through it. This is, again, the evidence that the Department of Justice has, AG Barr has, the Commissioner of the IRS, Charles Riddick, Taxpayer Advocate Nina Olson. But you're also going to see the delivery of this evidence that the FBI has. In fact, you'll see me and have seen me deliver this evidence to U.S. Attorney Lullen. And also the special agent in charge of the FBI in Boston, Joseph Bonavolto. So what you're going to see is absolute evidence. And what I'd like to say to the U.S. Attorney Lullen, you've seen him in the news recently. Have you seen the admissions scam that's making national news? Right. You know who brought charges against these people? U.S. Attorney Lullen out of Boston. The same individual that I've been sending my evidence to, along with the special agent in charge. Undeniable. I have the receipts. They've given me an inventory list. So let's think about this. How is U.S. Attorney Lullen going to explain that him getting national coverage on a $25 million tuition scam or admission scam when he's protecting a multi-billion-dollar drug cartel, when he's protecting a crime syndicate that's protecting them, that's covering up for the cartel, and by corrupting our courts? Information and evidence that I'm going to show you again today in this brief video that shows you your Attorney General's office. Not just in the state of New Hampshire, I am telling you it is a model in every state. Your Attorney General's office are infiltrated by these corrupt attorneys who then controls your departments within your state, such as the banking department that launders drug money, the DRA that extorts, education that steals, and then they protect the family court, which is another travesty. Its protection comes from the Attorney General's office. These same Attorney Generals become judges, as Judge Delker, as Judge Tucker, who protected the drug cartel. Again, it's an AG operation. And what you're going to see in this evidence that's indisputable, right by the numbers, that cannot be contested, was an operation run by the Attorney General's office. And Attorney General McDonald of New Hampshire, you've got this evidence. So this exposure is a model and a method that these people evolve into politicians and go to Washington. Why this is a national problem and a problem in each and every one of our states. So let's go by the numbers here, all right? Let's solve this crime. Because if we do, we get them all. And you'll see other series that either door gets us all. Now, at the end of this video, you're going to see an attorney of mine who handled the Department of Revenue claim. Okay, his name was Neil Pike. Now, you tell me if he ain't a mole. You tell me if he's not working undercover for them. And it's no great surprise to me, because I'm going to briefly start by going over that settlement agreement and showing you the stipulations of that. But those list of names on for releases were all moles. This is an absolute fact. Every lawyer, every paralegal, every accountant, several employees that I had, all my controllers were in time moles. Either they started as a mole, was hired as a mole, or they became one through extortion. Now you'll see that this settlement agreement is authored, and the defendants are Morris Mahoney. Morris Mahoney were my attorneys. And the first thing you'll be looking at is the confidentiality agreement. In this agreement, it's quite simple. I can't tell anybody that they're going to pay me $50 million to be quiet. Now, what have they possibly have done to warrant $50 million? Well, I've caught them with extortion by using the IRS manipulation, the Department of Revenue, the state banking department. And for God's sakes, they can't get into the banking department. You know why? Because you find out the corrupt laundering process and the cartel's laundering process. Okay, now let's just go to the back page. You'll see their names. Duggan, Kenny, Curley. These were all representing Morris Mahoney or their individuals, Nick Alexander and Renner. You'll see another deposition in another video coming where you hear Eric Renner. And you tell me if he's not a mole. And in fact, you hear them admit that they stalled me for 10 months to try to get these people out of statutes of limitations. They represented Liberty Mutual from the beginning. You can check Morrison, Mahoney, and you'll find out their biggest customer is Liberty, the insurance agent for the corrupt. Okay, now let's go to the next piece of evidence, and that is the releases themselves. Now I want you to briefly, because we're going to use these in other cases, but you've seen Alex Walker. Alex Walker was the attorney that this was suing them. He was my personal attorney. Now think about this. He had a lawsuit, won $5 million. Why? Because, again, it's another piece of extortion. If you don't accept their money, they can extort you further. This guy tried to have me murdered. All right? Now take a look at else. You'll see Larry Schwartz. He was my accountant. Grant Thornton, they were my accountants. Lisa Tracy was my controller. Morris Gilbert was my lawyer with the DRA. Tim Powell, you see, plaintiff's tax issue. He was only the manager of the IRS office of Portland, Maine. And then you'll see Bill Shaheen, who represented the drug cartel. And further in this video, you will see that the DRA had only one buyer come to my home. Only one buyer came to my building for my business. You know who that was? They auctioned it off to? The same Dick Anagnost, the head of the drug cartel, so that he could continue to extort me. See? Again, right by the numbers. Roberts, IRS issue. Fuller, IRS. Look at my accountants on the back page. Williams and Conley, my accountant. Divine Millimat, my accountant's an attorney. The IRS wants a release. The New Hampshire Banking Department and Commission. And last but not least, the Department of Revenue themselves. The same individuals that auctioned off my home wanted a release prior. Now, you'll notice the last page that it was signed. You'll also know the next page was the fact that this was certified by service, meaning not only did it go to me, which I actually didn't see till many, many, many months later, but it went to the other lawyers that are involved. For instance, here you go. It went to James Weed, Attorney James Weed, and Michael Tierney, Wayland, Starr, and Peters, Market Street, Manchester. Well, who was he representing? Oh, Walker, Sparkman, Maurice Gilbert, Donald Smith, Divine Millimat, the people who sued me. Let's think a look. Stephen Schultless, and he went to Tober. He was my wife's divorce attorney. You know what they did? They had to extend the divorce because of the incrimination to get out of statutes of limitations on all these matters. We only spent $8 million on a divorce and had no depositions. Let's put it this way. The OJ trial cost less. Why do you think, and if you look further on those, and that settlement and the releases, they were all divorce attorneys on it too. Now let's step through this, okay? So now you know there's an admission of guilt. Let's go through a couple email communications. You'll see that I've explained to Jim Wheat, and it comes to the table willing to offer anything. So you'll see those emails, communications between Barrington, who again became a mole, but Wheat, the attorney, who you've seen the stipulations and the settlement agreement went to, who was representing Walker. You'll see in the emails that they agree, and they even say that Walker and Divine Millimat owns the lion's share of the guilt. Think about that. That's an admittance of guilt. There is no, and they're talking about a global settlement to work it out proportionally. You see it in these emails, so that's proof. What you'll also see is an email from Walker to Henry Hyder saying, listen, if you give me a release, I'll take care of the DRA issue and the IRS issue. All issues that he self-created for the purpose of extorting me. That's motive, okay? That's motive. And it's also an admittance of their crime and a list of people who did extort me and defrauded me and stole tens of millions of dollars. And I said no. You see me say no. You see me say no in the emails. Not to the money, but to the releases because of the criminal nature of what they were doing and the people they continue to hurt. Okay, now let's take a look what the Department of Revenue used for evidence. How about my DRA tax return? In fact, it was the only evidence they did use. Well, here, Ellen Hurley, an absolute expert, approved in Massachusetts and New Hampshire right to the Supreme Court. In fact, you'll see that she's been accepted by Judge Delker, the same Judge Delker who ruled with the drug cartel and with Walker. You see what I'm saying? So in other words, they can't dispute this. Well, let's take a look at her conclusion. Based on the evidence contained in this handwriting, it is my opinion of this document examiner to the greatest degree of professional certainty that Mike Gill of the known material did not execute the signature on the question document. Guess what? That's my DRA tax return. I didn't sign it. And then she goes on about not just her qualifications, but all the systems that she used. So guess what? It was forged. Well, so now the question, and you get to see a copy of it, and it isn't even close to my signature. Now think about this. Why did they forge my name? Why did I never see that DRA tax return? Because the accountant, Cohen, Schwartz, who was on those releases, under the instructions from Attorney Walker, put income on my DRA that was wrong and criminal to allow them to leverage me. You can't have extortion unless you have a means. So it was done criminal. Now think about this. We don't have to even guess at that, because it turns out that accountant Cohen had a deposition. You get to see it. The question was, did you knowingly put that on the K-1 or the DRA return, the income? He goes, yes. Did you know it was wrong? Yes. Well, why did you do it? He said, because accountant Schwartz and Attorney Walker told him to. Well, there you go. So in other words, we've got them willing to settle, admitting extortion. We've got the motive because of that corruption that he tried to get Hyder and leverage me with my releases to fix the issues he created. And then we've got proof that he created the issue. And you'll see that Cohen's name is on that forged tax return. Not mine, his. Okay, so now then let's turn around and keep going a little bit. The Attorney General's office, they had to continue to extort me. You see the New Hampshire Banking Department? They extorted me with changing the notes. They put 3 bogus consent orders, complaints against me. The first 2 were in the millions. Guess what? Disappeared. Right. And you see deposition from John Friedman that turns around and says it was the worst corruption he's seen in 30 years. They wanted to extort me for my silence. Again, an AG operation. Again, protecting the banking department, which you saw wanted releases. You see? So it was a continued attack with all the means they had, from the Department of Revenue leveraging me, the banking department leveraging me, even the IRS leveraging me, who sought their own releases. And you hear a brief recording of the criminal division of the IRS admitting that they had a plant and that it was a cover-up. Okay, so this is all evidence that can be used. Now, what you're going to see is a recording, a deposition actually, of my attorney who represented me against these DRAs, who had all this evidence, knew of the settlements agreements, knew of the forgery, knew the tax returns weren't correct. He was a tax attorney himself. Now, you're going to hear him in a deposition, and I want you to use your judgment. Now, these are things that might be over some people's heads, but you tell me if this guy was working for me or, in fact, we caught another mole who was working for the Department of Revenue. And I want, in closing, to remind you, that same Department of Revenue, you'll see an auction, and you'll see that the AG, assistant AG, was at this auction. And that person that he was with, the one who bought my home and whom bought my properties for my business, was the same head of the drug cartel. Okay? Now think about this. Why did he have to buy my property through an auction for the DRA, considering he won a $274 million judgment? Now, didn't he? Or did he? The same corruption with the same individuals. Remember, he was represented by Shaheen and Gordon, the same people who offered me the settlement. Divine Millimat represented Walker, the same people who offered me the settlement, including Walker. What I'm telling you is this corruption from the beginning has continued over these years. This extortion and the level of the extortion has increased. And think about this. I am telling you, my paralegals, my lawyers were all corrupt in this with the drug cartel. They couldn't have evidence, they couldn't have witnesses, as in all the other cases, because you know why? They are the largest drug cartel in this country. They're protected by the same network who offered me $50 million, which is why they were all represented by this same network. That's a matter of fact and a matter of evidence. I will have, again, a series of videos coming out just like this that displays these evidence, and I want you to know the IRS, the Department of Justice, the FBI, AG Barr, the United Judicial Senate Committee has this evidence. Okay, now watch Neil Pike. Can you tell me who he is? Mike Gill, State of Corruption. Thank you. Did you do tax work for the mortgage specialist? You okay?
I did work related to taxes, yes.
Of course you did. Did you work with the DRA?
No, I don't believe I ever worked.
Did you work on information with the DRA?
I don't follow your question.
did you do any work on my behalf or the company's behalf with the Department of Revenue Administration?
I believe I communicated with them.
You did?
On your behalf, but I'm not certain to what extent. I believe.
So you did talk to the DRA?
Yes.
Okay. What was discussed?
I don't recall the specifics.
You don't recall the specifics of the DRA? Did we have a DRA issue, mortgage specialist and myself?
Yes.
We did. What was it?
I don't recall.
You worked on it.
Yes, I did.
You talked to the DRA.
Yes, I did.
And you have no memory of what you worked on and what was said.
I can only recall that it was a tax-related issue with the state. I don't remember the specifics.
So you were working on tax issues for myself and the company. So when I hired you as a tax attorney, it makes sense, doesn't it, that you came on as a tax attorney, seeing you're doing tax attorney work?
Yes, it would make sense that a tax attorney would do tax work.
Okay, that you did. Not that you did, but you have no recollection with the DRA.
I don't recall specifically what was discussed.
Are you saying that you only had one conversation with the DRA?
I'm saying I don't recall how many conversations I had.
So you might have had many. So you might have had many.
I may have.
Okay, so you could have had one or many. And in many, you still can't remember one conversation.
I can't remember specifically one conversation, no.
How about, do you remember anything regarding all those conversations, you know, as a tax attorney representing me and my company, which the issue would have been in the millions? Is that correct? The issue in the millions?
I don't recall.
You don't even remember how much money we were dealing with?
At this point, no, I do not.
Oh, but at that point, did you?
I can't really speak to a point in time that I don't recall.
Well, I'm saying if you're communicating quite possibly numerous times with the Department of Revenue, which you previously worked at, you have no recollection of anything?
I don't recall specifically the communications I had with them at that time,
Oh,
no.
you would agree you would have called them with a purpose. You're not calling them just for the heck of it. You must have been calling them with issues of myself and mortgage specialist. Isn't that right?
I've never made a personal call to the DRA while working at the mortgage specialist. Is that what you're trying to get
Wait a
at?
minute. Did I say that you spoke or communicated through email, text, or phone call to the Department of Revenue? You said multiple times. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
Well, then you're changing your testimony again.
No, sir, I'm not. The testimony I gave is I do not recall.
Well, wait a minute. You also said that I said if it was one time, could it be many? And you said it was possible that it was many.
Yes, I did.
So you did. So we've established that you were possibly had many calls or communication, text messages with the DRA.
There's a possibility I had more than one conversation with the DRA on the mortgage specialist's behalf. Yes.
Well, that was the question. So the answer is yes. Now, you wouldn't have called them unless you knew that there was an issue, right? I mean, you're working on issues.
I don't know as though I ever initiated conversation with that organization.
Are you saying they called you?
I'm saying I don't recall.
Oh, so you have no memory of making a call, receiving a call, right?
This is correct.
You have memory of an email to them, to you.
Specifically, no, I do not.
So we can say you have absolutely no memory other than it potentially could have been several communications.
That is correct.
You find that funny?
I believe your phrasing of the question to be
Well,
interesting.
well, it is interesting. So, you've had no other communications, written or otherwise, with the DRA?
Since what point in time?
I'm asking any time.
Before I worked at the mortgage
After?
specialist?
After?
I may have applied for a position with them after leaving the mortgage specialist, but I don't recall.
So, wait a minute. So you're saying that you applied for a job at the DRA right after I terminated you?
Could you define right after?
I'm sorry, I used your language of right after, so why don't you tell us?
At some point after leaving the mortgage specialist, I may have applied for a job at the DRA.
You might have.
Yes.
So you're not sure you did or not?
I'm not sure at what date I applied.
Well, I didn't ask you that. Not the date. You said you might have applied at the DRA. I find that a little unusual, meaning either you did apply at the DRA or you didn't. Which one is it?
I don't have that information on hand right now, but I could find it.
So you might have not even applied for the DRA.
After leaving the mortgage specialist? Yes. This is correct.
So you might not have.
Yes.
Or you might have.
Yes.
Okay, so we haven't any memory previous about the DRA, and we don't really even have a memory if you applied for a job or not there. Right?
This is correct.
Wow. Okay.